Hey y'all, Chelsea and Danny here.
Enjoy this episode of Today's Homeowner here on YouTube.
This may not look like a patio paradise, but it will after this week's show.
Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Real projects for real homeowners with real solutions. Information and inspiration on improving your home from professional remodeler Danny Lipford.
Welcome to the show this week. Now, the owners of this home have a beautiful backyard, but obviously no place to enjoy it. Now, originally they had a wood deck in this area, but it was so low to the ground it deteriorated very quickly. And we're replacing it with a nice patio. Now, instead of just pouring a concrete slab and leaving it bare, we'll be capping off the slab with a beautiful flagstone. And to take care of those hot summer days, we're building a shade arbor over the patio and including a nice outside ceiling fan to keep everybody cool. And you'll see it all in this week's show. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. As you can see, we're well underway with building the wood shade structure that we're building over our new patio slab that'll be poured a little bit later. Now, when we started this morning, we started with removing any of the debris that was in this area. Then we put up all of our strings to serve as a guide for the positioning of our post. Now, our posts are 6x6 treated posts. And what we did is we put them up on our sawhorses and created the groove that you see here. It's about 1 inch deep and about a 1/2 inch wide. The reason for this is we're helping the electrician out in hiding as many wires as he can when he starts wiring for the ceiling fan and the wall sconces that we're mounting on the inside of the posts themselves. That really makes a big difference when you're building a structure like this, is to make sure that your nailing pattern's good, making sure you're not putting any hammer marks on there, and hiding as many electrical wires as you can, because this structure will not be painted. It'll just be left to age out in the sun, which isn't a problem since all the wood we're using is treated. Now, when we set our posts, we dug down using post hole diggers about 2 feet deep, positioned the post in the hole, and then made sure that they were nice and level and plumb, and then used non-treated wood like these to really cross brace everything off to hold it in place. Now, the first part of the upper arbor is the 2x8 that they're in the process of installing now. Now, on the end of the 2x8s and on the end of all the other wood we'll be putting up has a little wing cut on it. It's just a 45-degree angle. This is just a little decorative touch. Instead of just having square cut wood, put a little angle on it, dresses it up a little bit. Now, after they have this piece completed and check it all out, they'll come back over here and put another 2x8 on this side and a 2x8 on either end, and then they'll be ready to install the 2x6 joist that'll really provide the shade for this overall area. With the height of the support beams established, the crew then marks the top of the post to be cut off and transfers that level mark to all the other posts by using a laser transit so that the posts can all be cut to be exactly the same height. Now all the perimeter supports can be nailed up flush with the top of the post. Now, as these go up, the level of these posts are checked one final time so everything is plumb and the overhangs are consistent. When all the supports are in, we're ready for the joist. Now, the joists we're using are 2x6s cut with the same wing cut so that there's a 16-inch overhang on either side of the arbor. Now, the beams are marked at 16-inch centers and the joist on either end are toe-nailed in place. Now, the crew pulls strings between the joist on the outer edge to keep a nice clean line. Then the joist is nailed up on one side and then the other. Occasionally the beams have to be pried out a little bit to overcome any bow that may be in the wood. With all of our 2x6 joists in place, we're basically finished with building the shade arbor. Now, later on we'll be putting a piece of treated plywood right in the middle of the arbor to serve as a mounting place for the ceiling fan the electrician will be installing. Now, this will really provide a lot of shade, especially once the homeowner plants her container vines that'll grow out over this, really make it a nice cool spot to sit during the summertime. Now, this has been the fun part. The hard part is about to start, because we're going to raise this slab up a ways to match the area where the wood deck used to be. You can see the line that we have right along here. Now, we're putting in 2 inches of stone plus 4-inch slab of concrete, so we need to come down from this point about 6 inches. That means we need to bring in about 7 inches of fill dirt to pack it out well so that we can pour the slab on top. You can see they're starting to bring in some of the clay now. It'll be brought in, packed, and we'll be ready to go. Now, the problem a lot of times with renovation projects like this on the rear of houses is limited access. So every bit of the 9 yards of clay that's being brought into the backyard is being brought in by wheelbarrow. And we'll look at all of that and a lot more coming up.
Get ready to review your fix-it list as Danny and home repair expert Joe Trewini show you this week's simple solution. Brought to you by DuPont Tyvek. Build it once, build it right.
Whether you live in a small home, an apartment, or a condo, you're probably always looking for a little extra storage space. Joe has an idea I bet you haven't seen.
Well, here's an idea I like, Danny, because not only does it utilize an old piece of furniture, this is in a drawer I got from a dresser that was on its way to the junkyard, but it utilizes space under a bed, which is great for storing things. Most beds are about 6 to 8 inches up off the ground, so you can use this drawer for storage underneath.
That's a great idea.
Now what it is, I bought 4 swiveling casters, and I'm just screwing them to the underneath side of the bottom side of the drawer.
I guess you really have to be careful on how large of a caster you get, because it may not fit into the bed because of the space there.
Right, so this is a 6-inch drawer. I mean, a 4-inch drawer would fit under almost any bed, and if you have to, you can buy wheels that mount to the side.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And what I did is I pre-drilled the holes just so the screws wouldn't split the wood. And these are just 3/4 inch screws. Drive them right in. And you only need 2 screws is plenty to hold it.
You're not going to have a lot of weight in there, I
No,
guess.
hardly any. And you want to be able to slide it out. That's the other good thing about using swiveling casters is the drawer will slide really well, roll really well even on the carpet.
Well, I like even being able to use the hardware there.
Yeah,
from
if
the
you
old
keep
drawer.
the handle on there, it makes it easy to pull it right out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I guess I can see where that could be used for toys or any kind of clothes or almost any kind
Shoes,
of storage.
they always get clogged up in the closet.
Right. And if the bed wasn't against the wall, you could really utilize that all the way around the
Right.
3 sides of the bed.
And here's the best part. Once you have it stored in, it's completely hidden from view.
Well, we're right in the middle of the second day of our creation of our patio paradise, and the guys have gotten a lot of the form boards up already and should be able to pour concrete here in just a day or so. Also, our electrician was out earlier this morning, and he's been able to rough in just about all the wires we need for our ceiling fan, our wall sconces, and the switch to control all of it. Now, we wanted him out early so that he could route a lot of his wires underground so that we can pour the slab right on top of it. Now, a little change has taken place from yesterday to today, and that's where we talked about how the slab and the flagstone going on top of the slab would hit just below the doorway there where the kind of ugly bricks are. Well, when we did it that way, we found out that out on the outer edge, the slab would have been this tall. Not a very pretty sight with the landscaping there and planning on putting around the perimeter of the patio. So we all decided collectively with the homeowner's approval to lower this down about 5 inches to get it a little closer to the ground. Should look a lot better. Now, our crew doesn't mind that because that means a lot less dirt that has to be brought in. But it does create the need for a step right along the patio doors there. So a little 5-inch step wrapped with stone, you'll probably never know it. Now, like I said, most of the form boards are in, and they're working on the tricky one now, the one that creates our radius. We're using a piece of flexible hardboard siding to create this curve. It's nailed to the 2x12 form boards on either end, and then to a number of stakes around the curve. Now, with the forms in place, we can put in the last of the fill dirt. Now, moving it in by wheelbarrow is fairly slow, but with our lower grade, we have much less to move than we expected. Now, instead of piling the dirt up just in one spot, we're spreading it out in layers so that the foot traffic will begin compacting it as we go. Now, in addition to us walking over the fill dirt to pack it down, we're also using a small hand tamp. Now, this is a lot of fun to use this for a few hours, but it really does help to compress the soil so that when we pour in the slab, we don't have to worry about any settling taking place later on. Now, there's motorized tamps available, but this is a fairly small job, so the hand tamp does fine. Now, once they completely tamp all the dirt out, rake it out to the right grade, then we'll be ready for our reinforcement wire. The sections of wire are tied together inside the forms to give the slab strength and prevent cracking. At the same time, we're wrapping the arbor post with builder's felt to protect them from concrete splatters. When the concrete truck arrives, the wheelbarrows go back in service to move the concrete into the forms. Fortunately, it's a fairly short distance from the gate to the patio because it'll take a number of trips to move the 7 cubic yards of concrete necessary to fill up the forms. Now, in order for the wire to do its job, it has to be within the concrete, not just beneath it. So Johnny, our finisher, uses his rake to pull the wire into the wet concrete as he spreads it. As an area fills up, he begins establishing the grade of the slab by troweling the concrete even with the grade lines marked on the walls of the house. Next, a long straight 2x4 is used to rake or screed the rest of the concrete level with the grade lines and the top of the forms. We also tap the edge of the forms with a hammer to prevent any honeycombing on the edge of the slab. Now, because we're applying a stone over the top of the slab, a smooth finish is really not necessary, just a good level surface. So the final step is pushing and pulling a large bull float across the wet concrete to completely level out the top of the slab. After our best new products, we'll be ready for the stonework.
Now let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out the best new products. Brought to you by the Home Depot.
Almost every home has at least one garden hose, and you may even have one of the fancy little hose reels to keep your hose nice and organized. Well, if you've ever tried to crank one of those things, you know that it can be a tough job to reel that back in. Well, now there's a way that you can do it with almost no effort at all. It's actually a unit called the Auto Rewind by Hydro Industries, and it actually has a motor that's powered by water to reel the hose in for you. And here's how it works. First of all, you have your hose connection here that you feed your hose in, connected here first. Then it has a short piece of hose that comes with it that allows you to connect this connection to a hose bib on the outside of your home. Then when you're ready to reel that hose in, you just reach over and pull up this handle, and the hose reels right in all by itself. Now, this particular model will actually hold up to 110 feet of hose. Other models will hold up to 200 feet. Now, here's a few other things. It has a little area, a little recessed area here for your garden gloves or maybe the sprayer that you may have been using. Also, it has a stop connector that you put around the hose so that your hose will not reel up in there, and it also connects right here so that you'll know exactly where the end of that hose is. Also, it'll close down so that you can protect your hose from the sunlight, which can damage it. This whole unit can be mounted right to a floor or a deck, and the whole thing costs only $80. Welcome back to the show. As we mentioned earlier, we're planning on putting a veneer flagstone over our new patio surface to really dress it up. Now, flagstone is just one of many options for your patio, and out at our local stone yard, Jeff Horn is the man that can tell you a little bit about what you need to consider. What are some of those things to help homeowners kind of narrow down their decisions, because you got a lot to choose from here?
Yeah, we sure do. We ask them a few questions when they come in. The first decision they need to make is whether they want to use a natural stone or a manufactured stone product like pavestone, for instance.
Right.
Once they've determined that, we need to know what they're exactly looking to do. We have people looking to do everything from sidewalks, patios, to fish ponds or retaining walls. So again, tell us what you're going to do, and then we talk about color. We've got colors ranging from white and gray all the way to black and chocolate. So once we get those 3 questions answered, we can come out in the yard and help them pick out their stone.
Okay, now I know there's a lot of thickness difference in the different stone pieces, and I noticed some of the lighter stone seems to be a little thicker than the other.
Right. We carry stone in 2 different sizes, really a veneer and then a flagstone. The veneer is used more for if people are looking to do a fish pond or a dry stack wall, or maybe a veneer on a fireplace.
Okay.
Once we start getting into the flagstone, a lot of the thickness is based on color. A rule of thumb is sort of that the lighter the stone, the softer it is. Some of the stone coming out of Tennessee that's almost sandy color or pink, very grainy, sandy, and can be softer. So if someone's wanting to do a, say perhaps a walkway in their backyard or even a patio, if they want to use the lighter color stone, we might want to go with a thicker depth to go ahead and provide the same strength as you might get in some of the darker stones.
That's right, I understand. Now this, of course, is the stone that's been selected, but how do you really tell how much this will cover? It's such irregular shapes. Is there some way of determining how much you really need?
Yeah, there are a few rules of thumb. Again, it all goes back to the thickness. Most of the pallets that we have coming in here weigh 1 ton. If a stone is going to be, say, between 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick, you'll get about 110 square feet. If you're going with the thicker stones that might be 1.5 inches to 2 inches, it might be about 85 square feet. And of course, if you're going to the veneer, you might get 250 square feet.
Okay.
So again, once we pick out your stone and what you're going to do with it, we can then determine how much you're going to need to go ahead and do the project.
Great, great. Well, I know you're about about to deliver all of this out to our project, and we can get those installers busy. Our 4 pallets of stone arrive on the job, and the crew begins mixing up the mud bed that the stones will rest in. Sand and Portland cement are dry mixed in a portable mixer, then water is gradually added until the consistency is just right. The patio forms have been raised about 3 inches to contain the mud bed, and the slab is slightly dampened with water to prepare for it. Dry Portland cement is sprinkled onto the wet slab and worked in with a broom to promote bonding between the concrete and the mud bed. The first batch of mud is dumped and spread out evenly over the small area before the laying of the stone begins. Now, this is where the process slows down a good bit because actually setting the stone is more trial and error than an exact science.
Well, what I'm doing is picking it up, make sure the size is kind of even, and if it's not, I pick it up and put a bit more mud on there, pack it down, and get my hammer here and tap my mud bed where I want it, make sure it's good and level and flat, gets a little solid. Now I pick it back up and I glue it in. I get a little glue on the back of it and put it about where I want it again. And right now it's kind of higher, but when I tap it down, it gets back to the same height. Just keep in mind it's not going to get perfect every time, because like none of the sides is even, none of the square, and it's put together like a puzzle.
To keep this puzzle as flat as possible, James uses a board resting on the forms to gauge the height of each piece as he sets it in place. Slowly but surely the puzzle comes together, and the guys begin filling the spaces between the stones with grout. Now this grout is a mixture of sand, mortar mix, and water, and is shoveled into a grout bag which kind of looks like an overgrown pastry decorating bag. Then it's squeezed into all of the gaps. As it dries, it's pressed down level with the surrounding stones, and the excess is washed off with a sponge. After all of the stonework was completely dried, we used a muriatic acid solution to completely clean all of the excess mortar or grout. It may have been on the top of it, and it really turned out great. And because the stones were so thick, and we used some of the thicker stones in this area, we were able to eliminate the step we were planning on, and we have a nice smooth transition from inside the house right out to the new patio surface. Also, our electricians have been out with our wall sconces, and the homeowner selected a really nice porch fan for the outside. Now, they did a great job on this selection. When we come back, we'll show you what else they selected to really make this patio their own.
Now let's go outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Tricia Craven-Worley. Brought to you by TimberTech Composite Decking. Less work, more life.
Recycling is always a good idea, and Tricia's in the process of recycling a few plant containers.
I am, Danny. We frugal gardeners like to recycle our pots. It's always a good idea to clean them out and to get them ready for the next planting.
Now that I don't really understand. You're going to be throwing dirt right back in, so why the need to clean it so well?
Well, it's a very good question, because there are certain kinds of funguses that can transfer in the soil from an old plant to a new plant. So what you want to do is start by brushing out the inside of the container. And then after that, you want to wash it out, probably with a strong hose blast, and then wipe it out.
Okay, and I mean, even to the point where you're actually wiping it even more than you have now.
Well, this may surprise you, but that isn't even enough. You really want to sanitize the container. So what you want to do is do a 9-to-1 water to bleach solution.
I see.
And after you mix that, you want to wipe the inside of the container thoroughly, all of the edges, everywhere, to sanitize it.
So you should really never use then the old soil or anything from a plant that's died.
No, well, even if it hasn't died, even if it's still healthy, you do not want to transfer that new soil to a new pot. Make sure the pot is totally dry before putting in the new soil.
Okay, well, let's dry it out and I'll help you out here.
Okay.
It's just amazing what a few container plants and a nice set of patio furniture can do for a brand new patio like this. Now, the homeowners wanted an area large enough that they could have a table and a little extra space, and we've got it taken care of. I believe they have a little entertaining in mind, so it's ready for them. I'm Danny Lipford. I hope you enjoyed this week's show, and hope to see you next week. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner. And don't forget to comment, like, and hit the bell icon so that we can notify you when new videos are posted.
And don't go anywhere, click around and continue the home improving fun.